We just brought you the story of a woman named Pauline Bingham, an immigrant from Cameroon, who's been in the U.S. since the age of 2. And Bingham's lawyer told All In today that while Bingham was in detention at the Irwin County ICE facility, a doctor recommended a procedure known as a DNC to treat menstrual irregularities. And when Bingham woke up from that procedure, she says the doctor told her he'd also removed one of her fallopian tubes, something she says she did not consent to or even know was going to happen. This morning, Pauline Bingham was about to be deported until she was removed at the last moment from a flight out of Chicago. She was in O'Hare on that plane, taken off of it. She would have been deported if it was not for a last-minute intervention from my next guest. Here with me now, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, Democrat of Texas, who stepped in on Pauline Bingham's behalf today. Congressman, first tell us how you became aware of Ms. Bingham's case.
Very late at night, last night, my colleagues on the Judiciary Committee, in particular, Congresswoman Jayapal, got word of this potential deportation of someone who was seemingly involved in what appears to be widespread hysterectomies out of a particular center. She was in my jurisdiction in Houston, not presently involved, and I want to make mention of the fact, very open to our plea that this might be a large congressional investigation, and we needed to make sure that Pauline, who had been here, as you've said, since she was 2 years old, would not be deported. Frankly, I think paperwork, which is part of the problem of a very large department, had her moving from Houston all the way to Chicago. This morning, we found out that what was supposed to be a temporary pause on her deportation had actually not been implemented, and she was on the way to being deported by a commercial flight. I'm very glad that I had the opportunity to work with those in the Houston-Harris County region to be able to say, Pauline is innocent. Pauline is potentially involved because of the courageousness of Dawn Wooten in a major investigation about health care in our detention centers. Besides the fact that Pauline had children here, had worked here, had contributed here, there seemed to be no reason for her to not have access to the process of a stay, which has not yet been ordered. But I'm grateful that my argument that this was so important, this was so large, that Pauline needed to be removed from that plane.
I know Congresswoman Jayapal, who's been tweeting about this and has been on this, and you as well, and I believe Congresswoman Garcia have been very focused on this since these reports have come out. Pauline is now in the U.S. She's in a detention facility. My understanding is that the facility in question in Irwin County, Georgia, actually a huge majority of the folks both don't have representation and end up deported. I mean, it seems that possible that if there is any malfeasance there, and again, this has not been established and the doctor denies it, that there would be people perhaps subject to that who are now spread across the world.
You're right, Chris, but the problem is, of course, in our laws and in the mindset of this administration, which is deportation, separation of families from children. We made a large step in making the statement that we're calling on a congressional investigation. 170 members plus signed a letter to ask for the Inspector General for this investigation. It is tragic that some of these individuals may have already been deported. And I believe if we can find them, the IG has to find them and, in essence, find a way to ensure that their testimony, their information is garnered for this investigation. Being assigned to a detention center, being given a deportation order is a civil action. It should not assign you to harm. And if these women were harmed, and only we as women, even though we thank our chairman of the Judiciary Committee and many men, many members of Congress for signing this letter, women can understand how invasive, how violating a hysterectomy is, particularly an unwarranted one. It deals so much with your personhood, your worth as a woman in many instances, if it is not voluntary, if you have not consulted with your physician, if you have not consulted with your family members, and if you have not determined that you are ready not to be of childbearing status. So it hit me in my heart, in my gut. And I couldn't imagine Pauline alone, having had this surgery, having the ability to explain to us in an IG investigation and to Congress, because I've called on congressional investigations as well to overlap the IG. I couldn't imagine her departing. I am glad that the team in Houston were willing to listen to both my plea and explanation of this major investigation that I believe is going to proceed in the very short order. Even the Speaker of the House has indicated that we need to find out how medical care is rendered in these centers. By the way, let me be very clear. These are for-profit, private, controlled detention centers, which I've never really felt was the way the government should go. Now, I've seen the need for doctors, Chris, and we went to the border and we were crying out for medical care. And we were doing so because children died. And we had government doctors come to be able to provide help there. But if we're having private detention centers who are securing medical help, are they making determinations about this health care of an individual woman or many women? And who gives permission? Yeah. And what happens when these women are under sedation? It is appalling. We have to get to the bottom of it. I'm glad we were able to get Pauline from that plane, and we did it through the process that we were able to do so. And we hope a fair process will be rendered by both Washington and locally for Pauline to be able to give her story in this investigation.
Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee in Texas, thank you so much for talking to me tonight. I just want to be clear that Dr. Amin's lawyer says in a statement, quote, "We are aware of the whistleblower's allegations as they relate to Dr. Amin and vehemently deny them. Dr. Amin is a highly respected physician who's dedicated his adult life to treating high-risk, underserved population in rural Georgia. Importantly, according to the Washington Post, one of the whistleblower's attorneys expressly acknowledged she did not speak to any of the women directly and that she included the allegations in the report with the intention of triggering an investigation to whether or not the claims are true." And that ICE said all in today in a statement that, quote, "To be clear, medical care decisions concerning detainees are made by medical personnel, not by law enforcement personnel. Detainees are afforded informed consent, and a medical procedure like a hysterectomy would never be performed against a detainee's will." That's the spokesperson from the medical director of ICE.